positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness which creates and animates all things. After years of exploring this awe-inspiring truth on this podcast, I'm super excited to announce that we are now going even deeper down the rabbit hole on the new late-night style consciousness-elevating talk show called Optimistic, which features none other than you, the listeners. Optimistic is taped out of the epic, spaceship-esque 8-bedroom property we call the Mystic Manor that myself and the rest of the Optimistic crew now navigate reality from in Venice Beach, California. And you are invited to come experience a Mystic Manor immersion week with us. During your week-long stay, you'll enjoy unique workshops, chef-prepared meals, one-on-one time coaching and consulting with me, and even co-creating magic with me as a guest on both Optimistic and an episode of the Positive Head podcast. When I started this, my aim with these immersive retreats was to facilitate the ultimate spiritual upgrade and tune-up, so to speak, for our guests while providing them with one of the most memorable experiences of their lives. And I'm happy to say that as of this recording, every guest at the end of their trip so far has told me that they have had a profound and transformational experience at the Mystic Manor and that they definitely want to come back. All that being said, we only have a limited number of spots available between now and next July. And as of this recording, about half of those spots are already filled. So if there's any part of you that is screaming, yes, I want to come, I feel like I need to be there, go now and book a slot with me to discuss how we can put our heads together and make it happen at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. I know for some people there is also that little voice in their head saying, why not? I can't get off work. I can't afford it, and on and on and on. But, really Henry Ford, I think, said it best. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And I'm confident that where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm personally committed to doing everything in my power, including discounts and payment plans, to get you here if it is something that truly feels like a huge yes for you energetically and like you're meant to be here. Once again, the link to book time to discuss with me is calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. That's spelled calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. All one word, of course. And book in some time and look forward to seeing you soon here at the Mystic Manor. All right, all you positive heads, welcome. Here we grow again. It is a magical Monday as I record in the studio, and so grateful to be with you as always. Today, I want to read a little a piece written by Ram Dass, who was birthed back into non-physical as I think today or yesterday, and seemed appropriate. He was, many of you know of him and are familiar with his book, Be Here Now, and just a prolific figure who has helped to spread awareness. And I thought it would be appropriate on the day of his birth back into non-physical to share some of his wisdom and some of his teachings. And and particularly in regards to what he just experienced, which is, being, as I like to put it, when you come to this dimension, you there's a death of sorts to where you came from. And when you die here, you're born back into non-physical, right? And the title of this particular piece on the ramdass.org website is called Dying is Absolutely Safe, Awareness Beyond Death. And it's written by Ram Dass. And so I figured today would be appropriate to cover this topic for in honor of his life and how much awareness and consciousness he spread on this planet. And now as he journeys onward, his work, of course, will continue here. Before I dive into reading this and discussing it, I wanted to throw out there as well, for those of you who are in the Los Angeles area, we're going to be doing a Mystic Manor New Year's party. And if you're interested in joining us for that, going to be an epic event, and all the details you can find if you go to, probably the easiest way is just to go to our Instagram, and you can find our Instagram page. It's We Are Optimistic, all one word. And remember, optimistic is spelled with MYSTIC, like mystical. So We Are Optimistic. And if you click on the link there, it will take you to information about, the New Year's party here at the Mystic Manor. If you guys are interested and you just happen to be in the area and looking for something really intentional and powerful to do with a gathering of, 150 people or so, it will be an epic affair, and a great way to bring in 2020 with clear vision. And of course, any of you guys that are also interested in coming to the Mystic Manor for a full week, you can check out optimistic.tv. And there's all kinds of information about, the retreat immersions that we are having here at the Mystic Manor. And I'd love to see you guys here. And of course, you can, on optimistic.tv, you can go to the link to book a conversation with me to figure out dates, et cetera, et cetera. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and just dive into reading this article and then discuss it a little bit here. And it's entitled, Dying is Absolutely Safe, Awareness Beyond Death. There's a tombstone in Ashby, Massachusetts that reads, "Remember, friend, as you pass by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, so you must be. Prepare yourself to follow me." Something has happened to me as a result of meandering through many realms of consciousness over the past 50 years that has changed my attitude towards death. A lot of the fear about death has gone for me. I am someone who actually delights in being with people as they are dying. It is such incredible grace for me. In the morning, if I know I'm going to be with such a person, I get absolutely thrilled because I know I'm going to have an opportunity to be in the presence of truth. It is now becoming acceptable in our culture for people to die. For many decades, death was kept behind closed doors, but now we are allowing it to come out into the open. Having grown up in this culture, the first few months I spent in India in the 60s were quite an experience. There, when someone dies, the body is placed on a pallet, wrapped in a sheet, and carried through the streets to the burning grounds while a mantra is chanted. Death is out in the open for everyone to see. The body is right there. It isn't in a box. It isn't hidden. And because India is a culture of extended families, most people are dying at home. So, most people, as they grow up, have been in the presence of someone dying. They haven't walked away from it and hidden from it as we have in the West. I was certainly one of the people in this culture who hid from death. But over the past few decades, I've changed dramatically. The initial change came as a result of my experience with psychedelic chemicals. I came into contact with a part of my being that I had not identified with in my adult life. I am a Western psychologist, a professor at Harvard, and a philosophical materialist. What I experienced through psychedelics was extremely confusing because there was nothing in my background that prepared me to deal with another component of my being. Once I started to experience myself as a being of consciousness rather than as a psychologist or as a conglomerate of social roles, the experience profoundly changed the nature of my life. It changed who I thought I was. Prior to my first experience with psychedelics, I'd identified with that which dies, the ego. The ego is who I think I am. Now, I identify much more with who I really am, the soul. As long as you identify with that which dies, there is always fear of death. What our ego fears is the cessation of its own existence. Although I didn't know what form it would take after death, I realized that the essence of my being and the essence of my awareness is beyond death. The interesting thing to me at the time was that my first experience with psychedelics was absolutely indescribable. I had no concepts to apply to what I was finding in my own being. Aldous Huxley gave me a copy of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. As I read it, I was amazed to find myself reading lucid, clearly articulated descriptions of the very experiences I was having with psychedelics. It was immensely confusing to me because the Tibetan Book of the Dead is 2,500 years old. I had thought in 1961 that I was at the leading edge of the unknown, but here was an ancient text which revealed the Tibetan Buddhist already knew 2,500 years ago everything I had just learned. The Tibetan Book of the Dead was used by Tibetan Buddhist lamas to read to fellow lamas as they were dying, and for 49 days after their death. Tim Leary, Ralph Metzner, and I began to see the book in metaphorical terms as the story of psychological death and rebirth, even though it was originally intended as a guide through the process of physical death and rebirth. I now think that the idea of dying and being born into truth or wisdom or spirit is really what our business is when we are talking about death. When you extricate yourself from the solid identification with your body, you begin to have the spaciousness to allow for the possibility that death is a part of the process of life rather than the end of life. I feel this very deeply. People ask, do you believe that there is continuity after death? And I say, I don't believe it. It just is. That offends my scientific friends to no end. But belief is something you hold on to with your intellect. My faith in the continuity of life has gone way beyond the intellect. Belief is a problem because it is rooted in the mind. In the process of death, the mind crumbles. Faith, consciousness, and awareness all exist beyond the thinking mind. I have a friend named Emmanuel. Some of you may have met him through his books. He is a spook, a being of light that has dropped his body. Emmanuel shares a lot of great wisdom. He is like an uncle to me. I once said to him, Emmanuel, I often deal with the fear of death in this culture. What should I tell people about dying? And Emmanuel said, tell them it's absolutely safe, he said. It's like taking off a tight shoe. In the past, when I endeavored to do in partnership with Stephen and Andrea Levine, Dale Bulgrim, and Bodhi B, is to create spaciousness around death. We had different programs like the Dying Hotline, in which people could call and have a kind of pillow talk with people who would help them stay conscious through the process of dying. We also, back in the early 80s, had a dying center in New Mexico. My model was that I knew being with people who were dying would help me deal with my own fear of death in this lifetime. In the Theravada Buddhist traditions, they send monks out to spend the night in the cemetery, where the bodies are thrown out uncovered for the birds to eat. So the monks sit with the bloated, fly-infested corpses and the skeletons, and they get an opportunity to be fully aware of all the processes of nature. They have the opportunity to watch their own disgust and loathing and their fear. They have a chance to see the horrible truth of what, as I am now, so you must be, really means. Seeing the way the body decays and meditating on the decay opens you to the awareness that there's a place in you that has nothing to do with the body or the decay. That combination led me, as early as 1963, to start to work with dying people and to be available to them. I am not a medical doctor. I am not a nurse. I am not a lawyer. I am not an ordained priest. But what I can offer to another human being is the presence of a sacred, spacious environment, and I can offer them love. In that loving spaciousness, they have the opportunity to die as they need to die. I have no moral right to define how another person should die. Each individual has his or her own karma, their own stuff to work out. It is not my job to say, you should die beautifully, or you should die this way or that way. I have no idea how another person should die. When my biological mother was dying back in a hospital in Boston back in 1966, I would watch all the people come into her room. All of the doctors and relatives would say, you are looking better, you are doing well. And then they would go out of the room and say, she won't last a week. I thought how bizarre it was that a human being could be going through one of the most profound transitions in their life and have everyone they know and love and trust lying to them. Can you hear the pain of that? No one could be straight with my mother because everyone was too frightened. Even the rabbi, everyone. She and I talked about it and she said, what do you think death is? And I said, I don't know, Mother, but I look at you and you are my friend. And it looks like you are in a building that is burning down, but you are still here. I suspect when the building burns entirely, it will be gone, but you will still be here. So my mother and I just met in that space. With Phyllis, my stepmother, I was more open, and she could ask whatever she wanted to ask. I didn't say, now let me instruct you about dying, because she would not have accepted that. But then came the moment when she gave up and she surrendered. And it was like watching an egg breaking and seeing a radiantly beautiful being emerge. And she was clear and present and joyful. It was a beingness that she always at some level had known herself to be. But she had been too busy all her adult life to recognize it. Now she opened to this beautiful being in the core of who she was, and she just basked in its radiance. At that moment, she went into another plane of consciousness where she and I were completely together, just being. The whole process of dying was just moments of phenomena that were occurring. But when she surrendered, she was no longer busy dying. She was just being, and dying was happening. Right at the last moment, she said, "Richard, sit me up." So I sat her up and put her legs over the edge of the bed. Her body was falling forward, so I put my hand on her chest and her body fell back. So I put my other hand on her back. Her head was lolling around, so I put my head against her head. We were just sitting there together. She took 3 breaths, 3 really deep breaths, and she left. Now, if you read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you will see that the way conscious lamas leave their bodies is to sit up, take 3 deep breaths, and then leave. So, who was my stepmother? How did she know how to do that? Ramana Maharishi was a great Indian saint. When he was dying of cancer, his devotee said, "Let's treat it." And Ramana Maharishi said, "No, it's time to drop this body." His devotees started to cry. They begged him, "Bhagwan, don't leave us, don't leave us." And he looked at them with confusion and said, "Don't be silly. Where could I possibly go?" You know, it's almost like he was saying, "Don't make such a fuss. I'm just selling the old family car." These bodies we live in, and the ego that identifies with it, we are just like the old family car. They are functional entities in which our soul travels through our incarnation. But when they are used up, they die. The most graceful thing to do is to just allow them to die peacefully and naturally, to let go lightly. Through it all, who we are is soul. And when the body and the egos are gone, the soul will live on because the soul is eternal. Eventually, in some incarnation, when we finished our work, our soul can merge back into the one, back into God, back into the infinite. In the meantime, our soul is using bodies, egos, and personalities to work through the karma of each incarnation. That was written by Ram Dass, 2010 it looks like, and or at least posted then. Yeah, such a beautiful perspective on how to approach grace with approach death with grace and ease. Such a beautiful thing to realize. It's just one transition to a next, and as we transition from one year to a new year, it's just this is the process by which things continue to fall away and something new will arise, and to know that we are all of it, and it is a process that you can never, you'll never complete. At some level, your soul will continue to find new iterations and new ways to experience and express itself. So everything that you're learning and taking with you, or that you're going through here, you take with you. And that is isn't that such an encouraging and inspiring thing to know and believe and live from the perspective of that all the work, all the things you've went through, come with you and carry on with you. And to find that when you die, it is something that you will laugh at the familiarity of it, and like, oh, this thing that I was frightened of is actually, there's nothing to fear, and like Mary Elizabeth Fry said in this short, beautiful poem, she said, "Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry. I am not there. I did not die." With that being said, I hope you all have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your now moment. Enjoy it while you're here, because in another moment, it will all change and something new will emerge, equally beautiful. And I so appreciate each and every one of you beauties for showing up to support everything that this podcast stands for and propagates into the world. We are doing it together. And until next time, I love you all so, so much. Journey well, my friends. And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.